Hi everyone, I'm Dana and welcome back to Inverter Always. So in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about one of the more common things that I see getting missed on a regular basis when it comes to installing the Daikin VRVS and VRV Life systems, and that is the field settings. When it comes to field settings specifically, you need to make sure that you're programming at least 2 or 3 to make sure you're optimizing the level of comfort for the application you are installing that VRV system in, and also so that you can make sure to optimize and increase the efficiency to the best of its performance capabilities. We talked about some of these recommended field settings a couple of videos ago. I'll go ahead and put a card in the corner now so that you guys can go back and check out that video, because in today's video, we're going to be focusing everything on backup heat. When you have an FXTQ air handler and you add a strip heater to it, what settings should you need to program to make sure that you're setting it up properly and not forgetting anything? Same thing goes with the VRV Life. If you have a Daikin communicating gas furnace with the CXTQ A coil, how and what settings do you need to make sure to program so that you have it set up properly? We're going to go ahead and jump right in because we have a lot of information to get into, you guys. But if you do enjoy today's video, please make sure to click the like button below. It really helps out my channel. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. So to kick things off today, you guys, we're going to be focused on all the settings first, and then we're going to jump into a little bit more of the discussion afterwards. That way, if you guys are in a hurry and you don't have 15 minutes to look at the entire video, you have what you need right at the beginning. But I do encourage you guys to stick around because I am going to be discussing my preference, some of the things I do in my market that work really well, and I'll be sharing some tips and tricks with you guys so that way you can minimize the amount of time on the job. When we're talking about these settings, I will put timestamps down in the description of the video so you guys can jump around as needed. Now, as far as the FXTQ air handler goes, the only note disclaimer that I will put in for this video is we are only talking about today's air handler. It's the FXTQ that ends with the suffix in the model number TAVJU and an A or a D at the end. Either it does or does not come with a built-in circuit breaker is the only difference, but we're not talking about the older FXTQ PVJUs. They have a totally different strip heat, part number, different connection, different board, different settings entirely. They do not cross over at all. Now, when you guys are installing the strip heater with the FXTQ air handler, it is important to make sure to record what size the air handler and what size the strip heater are, because there is a combination chart in the installation instructions for the FXTQ air handler. You can't just put any sized strip heater on any sized air handler. There is a combination chart, and that's actually the first setting you have to program into the controller for that indoor unit. Is you have to tell it what size strip heater you've installed. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into the field settings, you're going to go to mode 21, and then you're going to go to setting 5, and depending on the size of the strip heater, you're going to change it from 5-01, which is the default. That means you have no strip heat kit installed, to either 5-03, 5-04, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever size strip heater that you have. The next thing that you're going to program is you need to program whether or not you want the strip heater to run with the heat pump to act as supplemental heat, and if you want the strip heater to run during defrost. Now, again, I'm going to give you my breakdown and my explanation towards the end of the video. I'm just going to give you the settings right now. Those settings are going to be mode 21, 3-01, which is the default. If you do not want the strip heat to run with the heat pump for supplemental purposes to help the heat pump catch up should it fall behind for any reason, and you also don't want it to run during defrost. If you want it to run with the heat pump, that is allowed, but you still don't want it to run during defrost because defrost is only 6 minutes, then you would change mode 21, setting 3-01 to 3-02. Now, if you want to allow the strip heat to run with the heat pump and run with defrost, then you would set mode 21, setting 3-01 to 3-08, enabling the strip heat for both defrost and simultaneously heating with the heat pump to help it catch up for supplemental purposes. The last setting option is 07. It's not a common one, but that is if you do not want the strip heater to run with the heat pump, but you still want it to run during defrost. The last set of settings you're going to need to program are what we call the T on, T off settings. Basically, it's the number of degrees you want to let the room temperature drop below the set point before the strip heater comes on. And then after it comes on, how many degrees you want that strip heater to help recover the room temperature to before it shuts back off. So your T on temperature, your strip heat on temperature, number of degrees below set point is going to be mode 21. Setting number 1-01 is the default, which is a 7.2 degree Fahrenheit drop or droop below the set point. So if your set point is hypothetically 70 degrees, it would drop 7.2 degrees below that before the strip heater kicks on. And then mode 21, setting number 2-01, which is the default, is going to be 3.6 degrees. When you read it on the chart, I'll put a picture of it up here. You'll see that it says -7.2 and -3.6 for your T on and your T off. For mode 21, settings 1 and 2 respectively, if you are going to leave them at the default setting. Again, to reiterate, that is 7.2 degrees below the set point is where the room temperature will kick on the strip heat. When it gets to 3.6 degrees below the set point, it will then turn off the strip heat. The only rule here is you have to have the strip heat on for at least 3.6 degrees of recovery. So if you wanted to change mode 21 setting 1 to, let's say, option 4, 1-04, that is a 4.5 degree droop or drop from set point. So if my set point is 70, the room temperature is allowed to fall 4.5 degrees Fahrenheit before it turns on the strip heat. Then I would have to make sure I set mode 21 setting number 2 also to option 4, 2-04, because my on minus my off temperatures have to be at least 3.6 degrees. 4.5 drop from set point is on, 0.9 degrees below set point is my off temperature. And if you want, you can go beyond that. It just has to be at least 3.6 degrees. So if I wanted to pick mode 21 setting 2-05, well, 4.5 minus 0 degree drop from set point is 4.5, which is greater than 3.6, so you're good to go. Just make sure it's at least 3.6. And those are the 3 settings, technically 4 settings, that you will have to make sure to set if you have an FXTQ air handler with a strip heater added. When you're ready to program the gas furnace field settings, there's actually fewer settings that you need to program here, because you're not going to tell it what size your gas heat is. You don't need to do that. And you also don't need to tell it whether or not you want to run the gas furnace with the heat pump, because you can't run the gas furnace and the heat pump at the same time on that CXTQ 8-coil zone. On that unit, it's one or the other. So your first setting that you're actually going to need to set is just, do you want to run the gas furnace during defrost or not? Now, when you have the gas furnace, mode 21 setting 3, your default option, at least as of right now, is 3-07, which means go ahead and run the gas furnace during defrost. If you do not want to run the gas furnace during defrost, you would change this to mode 21 setting 3-01. Now, if you're looking at the installation instructions, I'll put a snippet up here so you guys can see it as well. You'll see that there are additional options for no and for yes when you're running the gas furnace during defrost or not, and that is simply just how long you want that heat pump to be locked out for. I go ahead and I just leave it at option 7 or option 1 because defrost is so short, and I know we're going to talk about my preferences later. That's not really a preference thing. It's just that defrost is so short, you don't need to lock out the heat pump for any longer than 15 minutes. So 3-01 or 3-07. The other setting you're going to need to set, just like we did with the FXTQ air handler when you had the strip heat hooked up to it, is you have to program the T on, T off temperature. So in this case, because you can't run the gas furnace with the heat pump, it's at what temperature do you want the room to fall below the set point before it kicks on the gas for the heat pump. So it shuts down the heat pump, turns on the gas. So your default in this case is the same as with your strip heat options. Mode 21 setting 1-01 is 7.2 degrees below your set point. It's how far your room temperature can drop or droop. I like to call it the droop temperature because your room temperature is drooping below the set point. 7.2 degrees before it kicks on the gas and shuts off the heat pump in this case. Then you need to program your T-off temperature. So at what temperature do you want your gas to then shut off? And that's mode 21, setting 2. Now 2-05 is the default with the gas furnace. So if you look at this chart here, you'll see 2-05 is a 0. That is 0 degrees below the set point, which means when the gas comes on for the heat pump, it is going to recover all the way back up to the set point, and then it's going to finally shut off the gas. Now, just like with your strip heat settings, you do need to make sure that you have at least a 3.6 degree difference between your gas on and your gas off temperature. So if you're going to bump up mode 21, setting 1-01 to let's say 1-04, so that's 4.5 degrees below the set point is where the room temperature has to droop before it kicks on the gas. Just make sure that you have at least mode 21 setting 2-04 or 2-05 or 06 enabled. Now, if you do not want the gas to come on at any amount below the set point, then you're going to go ahead and program mode 21, setting number 1-07, and mode 21, setting 2-07, and you'll see in this chart it says HP only. That means run the heat pump only. You don't want to use the gas furnace for this type of backup heat. Maybe you're just using the gas furnace for emergency heat purposes if the heat pump fails. Now, once you've completed the field settings for the FXTQ air handler with a strip heater, or if you had the CXTQ A coil with a gas furnace, doesn't matter. Once those field settings are complete, regardless of those options, you're going to need to go back to the outdoor unit because you need to enable a field setting called heat pump lockout. Now, heat pump lockout is a setting where if the heat pump has a failure, let's say it has a dead compressor, you lose an inverter board, DC fan motor, whatever, if there's an error code that shuts the outdoor unit down and it can no longer operate, it'll automatically go into what's called heat pump lockout. That's only if you turn on heat pump lockout. And this is the field setting that everybody always misses. If you guys watched a couple videos ago, I actually did a video on showing you guys how to use the buttons on the outdoor unit and the LEDs. I'll go ahead and put a card in the corner for those videos. It's very important you understand how to use the outdoor unit field setting buttons and understand the binary value of the LEDs. We're not going to talk about it in this video. I'm simply going to give you the setting that you need to program. So if you do not know how to change these settings, going back through my VRVS install and commissioning playlist, checking out those videos is going to be very, very, very helpful for you guys who have not done this before. So going to the outdoor unit and turning on heat pump lockout is very easy. First, you need to make sure the outdoor unit H3P light is the only light on and solid. That indicates that the outdoor unit is at the main screen. And then you need to go into what's called mode 2 or service mode 2. And you do this by pressing and holding the mode button at the outdoor unit. This usually takes about 5 to 6 seconds, but what I always tell my guys is press and hold the mode button until H1P is solid on. That is your indication that you are in the service mode. Now you're going to very carefully press the set button 37 times. So 37, if you know how to count up the binary LED, awesome. And if you don't, the lights that you need to make sure are on are going to be 1, 2, 5, and 7. 1, we don't count that value. 2 is a value of 32. 5 is a value of 4, and 7 is a value of 1. So if you add up 32 plus 4 plus 1, you get to 37. Once you verify that you are at 37, you need to go into that setting. And so you press the return button 1 time, and now you're going to have H1P solid. Now, the only reason that H1P is the only light on right now is because the default option is option 0. Well, if I have no lights on except for H1P, that is a value of 0. But sometimes folks will get confused because they'll think, oh shoot, did I press the wrong button? And now I'm back to the beginning of service mode 2. As long as you pressed that return button 1 time, no, you're not pressing the wrong button. You're in that setting, but none of the other lights are on because the current option is 0. So what you're gonna do is simply press the set button 2 times. H6P should be blinking, H1P will still be solid, and now we need to save that setting. So you hit the return button and it goes from a blinking 6 to a solid 6, and then you press return again to activate that setting. It goes back to H1P, no other lights are on. You're good to go. You can hit the mode button to escape. It goes back to H3P solid all by itself, and now you have successfully turned on the heat pump lockout field setting. So now at any point in time, if the outdoor unit has an error, and you can test this by unplugging one of the pressure transducers if you want. The system doesn't have to be operating. As soon as you unplug that pressure transducer, boom, there's going to be an error code, right? Because now it doesn't see that voltage coming back through that pressure transducer. So once you have any error that will lock out the heat pump from operating, your backup heat source will become the new primary source of heating, and it will follow your thermo on-off deadband field settings that you programmed earlier on in the commissioning process. And if you don't know about that thermal on-off field setting, I'll put a card in the corner for the video where we talked about this, and it was part of the VRVS install series. So go check that out and you can get all the recommended field settings that we talked about that you need to be programming on every single job. So you might be thinking that now you're done. Well, if you have a VRVS with a strip heater on an FXTQ air handler, then yes, you are done. But if you have a VRV Life with a gas furnace and a CXTQ A-coil, you are not quite done. There are a couple more settings that you need to make sure you at least verify or discuss that you maybe need to change these settings, and that is at what outdoor temperature does the heat pump automatically lock out and run the gas furnace as the backup heating source. This is not emergency heat. This is just basically your balance point. So out of the box, at least today, your balance point is set for 15 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to be minus 9.4 degrees Celsius for any of you Celsius guys out there. But 15 degrees outdoor temperature, heat pump's going to automatically shut down, and it's going to change over and it's going to operate the gas furnace. And that's when you have a one-to-one gas furnace indoor and outdoor application. If you have other indoor units like wall mounts, cassettes, other ducted units, then the heat pump will technically continue operating for those zones. And then the gas furnace will just close down the EEV, the electronic expansion valve, for the CXTQ A-coil or run the gas for that zone. One of the cool things about VRV Life is you can run the gas heat and other heat pump zones simultaneously. So that's one of the reasons I put it on my house. I can run the gas downstairs and I can run my wall mount in the garage all simultaneously. It's pretty cool. But I digress. So the way that you would go in and change any of these balance point temperatures is you would go to the outdoor unit mode 2. So go back to service mode 2 like we did earlier, and you need to go to setting 14. The default option is going to be option 6. You can change that anywhere from option 0 all the way to option 15. When you're looking at the chart here, you'll see that when you get to option 14 and 15, those are basically lockouts that either say just run the gas or just run the heat pump. Because if you're going to lock it out at 212 degrees outside, that's basically always going to be locked out. If you go to option 15 and that is minus 148 degrees, then basically that's saying, hey, you're going to run the heat pump all the time. So those are your ways of doing any testing, or sometimes we'll have folks that want to use a VRV system for cooling only and they want to run the gas furnace all year. But that's what option 14 and 15 mean when you look up at this chart here. The last setting we need to talk about is going to be the amount of outdoor temperature, outdoor degrees that have to recover before that lockout is basically disengaged. So that is going to be mode 2, setting 15. And the default option is option 1, which is 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So if we leave everything default and the outdoor temperature drops to 15 degrees, then your gas is going to be running until the outdoor temperature is 25 degrees. You might have to go back through and watch it again just to make sure that you got a good handle on this. But now comes a little bit more of the slower discussion where we're going to talk about just a couple of things that I've seen in the field that can hopefully help you guys, hopefully make it go a little bit smoother when you guys are changing some of these field settings. So the first thing I want to talk to you guys about, I'm just pulling up my notes here, is going to be back on the FXTQ air handler when you have a strip heater. Now, when you think about this particular system, it's a VRVS, it's a VRF system. It's the highest efficiency, it's the premium product It's supposed to provide the ultimate comfort while also saving the homeowner the most potential amount of operational costs. One of the biggest things that is going to kill all of that immediately right out of the gate is if you're running the strip heat. When you install a strip heater, the idea is that it is for emergencies only. When you design your system, you should be designing it for the outdoor design load, the design low temperature outside. You should know when you're installing it that, yep, I'm going to have plenty of capacity regardless of how hot or cold it gets outside, which means that you should never need the backup heat. What's the backup heat for? The backup heat is if my heat pump breaks, I'm not going to have frozen pipes that burst in my house and flood my house. So when I'm looking at the field settings for strip heat, one of the things that I'm always thinking about and talking with my contractors about is you want the strip heater to run as little as possible, because every time it's going to run, it's going to cost a lot more money to operate. The idea is you want to educate the end user on how a VRV, how a VRF system, how an inverter system works. Set it, leave it, forget it. We've talked about this hundreds of times on this channel. That is the whole purpose of this technology, is you find that comfortable temperature, whether it's 70 or 69. I like my house at 69. And leave it there. Don't change it. If you need to bump it up a degree, bump it down a degree, cool. But when you have a homeowner that sleeps at 60 degrees and wants to wake up at 70 degrees, you're going to have a problem. What kind of problem are you going to have? Well, let's go back to mode 21, setting 3, where you're going to tell it to either run the strip heat with run the strip heat with heat pump, or not run the strip heat with the heat pump. If you choose option, 3-02 or 3-08, so mode 21, 3-02 or 3-08, that is going to allow the strip heater to run with the heat pump. Then what you also need to set is the T on, T off. If you decide, no, I'm not going to run the strip heat with the heat pump, option 3-01 or 3-07, it's not allowed, then you don't need to program T on, T off. So let's say, yeah, you are going to program the strip heat to run with the heat pump as a supplemental heating, just in case the heat pump doesn't keep up for whatever reason. Something happens and it's falling behind. Okay, well, before you program T on, T off, you need to have a conversation with the end user, because your T on temperature cannot go any lower than 7.2 degrees. So if you have a customer, an end user, a homeowner who sleeps and they set it all the way back to 60, where they turn it off, and then in the morning they want to wake up to 70 cozy temperatures, right? Warm floors to put their feet on or whatever, fine. But your strip heat's going to come on every single morning. That strip heater is going to turn on, and guess what? That bill is going to go through the roof. That's going to be the customer that calls and says, hey, why is my energy bill triple what it used to be before I got this VRF system? Come back, pull this thing out. This thing is costing me an arm and a leg. Well, hold on a second. No, let's look at the settings, because 99% of the time, the reason it costs so much is because you're running the strip heat every single day. So what you need to do is you need to make sure to educate that end user. Here's how the system's designed. Here's how it's supposed to be operated. It's designed to maintain, set it, leave it, forget it. And if for any reason the homeowner's like, no, I don't care. I want to sleep at 60 and I want to wake up at 70. Okay, that's fine. But you need to make sure you don't run the strip heat with the heat pump. So you need to pick mode 21, setting 3-01 or 3-07. So that way the strip heat doesn't come on every single morning. So then you'll say, okay, well, what about that deficit? The heat pump's going to have to work its butt off to recover every single morning, right? Yeah, it's going to be working 100% to try to recover that 10 degrees difference. But it is what it is. Make sure that they set the schedule for earlier in the morning. So instead of coming on at 6 a.m. to try to get that house up 10 degrees by, let's say, 7 a.m., well, tell them to turn it on at 5 a.m. and try to get to 70 degrees by 7 a.m. Or have them bring it on at 4 a.m. and only come up 3 degrees. And then at 5 a.m. come up 3 more degrees. And then at 6 a.m. come up 3 more degrees. That way at 7 a.m. they're only like 1 or 2 degrees away from set point. So there are some things you can do with the scheduling to try to compensate or offset this humongous difference in temperature. But I digress. You have to be really careful with the T on and the T off temperatures if you are going to allow the strip heat to run with the heat pump. The other thing I want to talk about with the strip heat is a very easy one, and that's, do you want to run the strip heat with defrost or not? Now, defrost is only 6 minutes, you guys. 6 minutes, plus or minus. It's not a very long defrost cycle. And by default, the FXTQ air handler will either shut off the fan or it will run the fan on low. It's not running a lot of air out of the registers during defrost, if any at all. So by the time you realize, oh, it's kind of cold, or I feel a draft, or whatever have you, defrost is likely almost done or done, and the heating is already kicking back up into gear. So I don't like running strip heat with the defrost. Again, I only want to run strip heat when I absolutely have to for emergencies. So that's just my take on it. And hopefully that gives you guys just a little bit of information, a little bit of ammo before you set it, to prevent that callback and to prevent that homeowner from having a bill that's triple what it should be. Just as an example, it has happened more than one time, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. So you guys, I think that is about it for backup heat. Really wanted to just focus on that one topic, since there are two different sources of backup heat. As you guys can see, this turned into a full video easily all on its own. I hope this information was helpful for you guys though. Lots of information to go through. Again, please, all I can stress is be careful when you're changing the field settings, because they are permanent. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate, put them in the comments below. Usually with topics like this is a very good conversation starter, especially if you have the opportunity to talk to the end user, the homeowner. Usually, since this is more residentially, as far as this discussion is focused, I like to have that conversation with the homeowner. Give them the opportunity to fully understand what the system is capable of and be more comfortable with not setting back at night like they used to on their old system, or not needing that strip heat every single time the system goes into defrost, or things like that. Have that conversation with the homeowner. It seems like one of the big issues that happens, it's not necessarily electric heat or gas heat, backup heat focus. It's just the homeowner doesn't always understand how the system works, right? They know it's efficient and they know it's supposed to be ultra comfortable. Nobody ever sits down and says, okay, look, this is how your system is supposed to work, and here is why we're recommending you do it this way. Now, if it doesn't work and they're still uncomfortable, you can always go back and make adjustments very easily. But that's going to go a lot further than not making any adjustments and then having a very unhappy customer when they go online and they go, oh, well, look, I could do this and this and this and this. Why didn't you tell me about this? Why didn't you educate me about this? So you guys, I strongly encourage that conversation to happen, because it's going to save you the callbacks down the road. And that's the whole point of this channel, is to help you guys, educate you guys, so that you can go on and be more successful and have your projects go as smoothly as possible. So again, if you guys have any questions, do not hesitate, put them in the comments below. I read all of your guys' comments. I do my best to respond to all of your guys' questions as well. But you guys, that is about it for today. If you enjoyed today's video, please click the like button below. It really helps out my channel. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. If you guys want to support the channel, you can through the memberships. All you gotta do is click the join button. It's right next to that subscribe button. 4 different membership tiers for you guys to choose from. I greatly appreciate all of your guys' support and continued investment in me to help make more content for you. You guys, thank you so much for watching Inverter always. I hope you have an awesome day.